once again, another proverb, me anga whakamuri kia anga whakamua. So we need to sometimes reflect and look back to be able to move forward together. For us, in the world of Māori, our way that we view the world is the past, the present, and the future is all connected. And so that's how we view the world as tangata whenua. Yeah, once again, it's we have a lot of value to add to projects and kaupapa that may be rolled out in terms of the sort of mahi that we're doing in restoration. And I just want to take an example of that. I was the lead liaison for the response to New Zealand's worst maritime disaster, the Rena grounding and subsequent oil spill that occurred in Tauranga Moana. And our experience with that was when we first heard about the ship grounding on the reef, we knew that they set up a response to that event. And so we tried to get ourselves involved. We wanted to be included in that response. And so when we tried to get involved, basically the door was shut in our faces. We had to lobby, we had to fight hard, and eventually we got to a point where we were enabled, allowed to be part of that response. And so we had a big hui, and I was voted as the liaison for that response. And so I went into that the ICC, the Incident Command Centre, and when I walked in there was probably one of the most chaotic things that I've ever seen. People running around like headless chickens, to be honest. And so what we did was we went and grabbed a table and a whiteboard, plonked ourselves right in the middle, and writ on there, tangata whenua iwi liaison. And then we started to talk with people. We started to build relationships, I suppose. And then once we started to talk with people, we started to look at how we could add value to that response. And I ended up being in that position for a whole year. And I think that we made some really, really positive contributions to that whole response, where we ended up becoming quite strong leaders in terms of how that response was rolled out. And the information that we were able to share for our traditional knowledge was invaluable to them, as they still say today. So much so that they've actually made a lot of changes in terms of the way of policies, etc., in making sure that they involve tangata whenua going forward, if, God forbid, this event does ever happen again. I want to talk about Jack Thatcher. We've got the waka out here, and he's one of our leading waka voyaging rangatira, tohunga, here in Aotearoa. And so they had all these flash things that could predict where the oil was going to go, and rada. And when he arrived, he come and actually basically told them exactly where all the oil was going to land. And then when their machine finally caught up, they actually realised, oh man, this fellow was right. And so that traditional knowledge, that local knowledge, really added value to be able to be a bit more effective, more efficient in terms of the response. We were able to mobilise our people to make sure that we looked after sites of significance. Once again, that's empowerment of tangata whenua, enabling them to be able to go to those important sites, do the clean-up ourselves, and making sure that we do it in the most appropriate way, cultural way, where we do our karakia, we involve our tamariki, so it just eases the mamai, the pain and the suffering that we're feeling at that time. So adding tangata whenua into projects will only add value. What's good for Māori is good for everyone. So my plea to you all in terms of projects going forward is make that connection with tangata whenua, because once you do that, you're going to see the hua or the fruition that'll come out of that relationship. Kia ora.
So now we're getting into actually seeing what the web application looks like. But I will just say right now that the first phase was a pilot run. So it was, are we able to create something? Could it possibly work? And then if there are possibilities that it is going to work, then we'd go into phase 2 and develop it further. So we had a young guy from Auckland, worked for NIWA actually, who developed, who did all the coding for our web application. We're a bit old to be developing web applications, so we've got someone who was a lot younger than us that knows more about this stuff, and he did a real good job actually. And so here we are, we're down to how do we tell those stories, how do we inspire people, how do we connect those isolated Kaitiaki who are working on different projects. And this here is just a screenshot of what it actually looks like. And you can see that at the top, we try to use engaging visuals, engaging questions, and that way hopefully we can get that connection and get people making that connection to each other. We were really fortunate enough that we trialled it with a Kaitiaki that was working on looking at the mud snails. His father had told him that there were thousands of mud snails in front of their house, and it was a tauranga species. They loved eating them, and now they were gone. And so Caine was cool enough to bring him in, and we got him starting to use this and see how it worked. And what it did was it put him in contact with someone else that had done a project very similar, and she helped them to develop the monitoring program for the mud snails. What we realised was it wasn't a be-all and end-all. You couldn't just go onto the site and have everything to go out and do it yourself. But what it did was it created a space for Kaitiaki to talk to each other. It created a space for them to share resources. And so they were able to share the monitoring equipment and the expertise about how to do the monitoring in a scientific way as well. And then through the evaluations, we showed the videos that came out of that, and another group were thinking about doing a similar project, and now they've got someone to contact as well. And so I think we've been able to put them in contact with each other through the system. Where are we? Yeah, so we went back, we had a look at the current trends with social media, and we used that throughout this as well. So our videos are very short. You're able to watch them without the noise on, so they all have subtitles on them, because we found that people are watching it at work and they don't want to be heard, so they can do. So we're trying to connect the people that are at work that want to be doing something else, and students that are in class that want to be doing something else. So that was our target audience now. And again, just those really engaging titles and descriptions, so that we talk about stopping people scrolling, stopping the thumb from scrolling. If you want to connect to the youth nowadays, you've got to stop that thumb from scrolling, and that's what we try to do. And so this is a look in. Once you've, I suppose the theory was, once we could stop them from scrolling, then what? How do we actually get them to engage in the content? And so here are the videos, very short videos with subtitles, very short descriptions, so we didn't bore anyone. And you can see this link between the parents and the children. And so once they're convinced that it's a project they like, then we have all the information underneath that they can connect to. And I think this slide here is really the beauty of the whole project, about capturing them through that genealogical framework and connecting them straight to those scientific methods and frameworks. So this here is really the page that connects mātauranga Māori to academic science. You wanna? Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, on our journey, it's really enabled us to move forward from being into quite a negative space into a much more positive space, because we're a lot more aware and we're a lot more understanding of what's been happening out in the moana and the causes. And so it stopped us from getting just into the finger pointing and the blame game, actually, and then starts to move us into what can we do moving forward. So where we've gone from and to where we are now is quite amazing, and it's tools like this that actually really woke us up and went, far out, we've actually done some really cool things. So we're at a point now where we're able to transfer knowledge from my generation down to the next generation, and in Tauranga we're always holding wānanga, we're always holding wānanga of our rangatahi and passing on that knowledge transferred down to them in a much more positive way, because we're a lot more aware and we understand more of what's the causes, what the causes are that put us in the situation we are now. So we have programs that are running all the time with our rangatahi where we empower them to be the next Kaitiaki. As Regan said, too many times they're just on their phones these days, so it's given us the confidence and given us put us in a position of leadership where we feel confident to be able to go out there and share the knowledge with our rangatahi, because they are the next leaders and the next Kaitiaki for the future. Ka pū te ruha ka hau te rangatahi. These old nets will lie in a heap and the new nets will go fishing. And so, we've just been so enthused, so uplifted by this journey that we've been on, to be able to now, like I said, stand as rangatira, stand as leaders within our communities, and be, like I said, in a more positive space about how we look towards the future. And as I said before, we are now working a lot more closer with our community, with scientists and researchers, to actually look at the main kaupapa, which is actually the future and the health of our environment. So, we're in a lot better space than we were a few years ago. Kia ora.
I think we might have like another 5 minutes or so before we need to get some questions going. So this part here is actually something that came out as requests as we were starting to develop the web application. And one of them was connections to ArcGIS maps, so that our Kaitiaki were able to look back at pre-1840 marine habitats, land use habitats. And so that was something that went in towards the end of the project, and we trialled it, and it was definitely something that they wanted to see more of. So heading into phase 2, we're going to develop that a lot more. We're going to start trying to be able to have a system where Kaitiaki can start inputting the observations into that part of the system as well. So we can start building those collective observations over time. On your bottom right, we started looking at ways that they can have their own autonomy. So when we talked about rangatiratanga, how are they able to control this? Is it going to be centralized with somebody, where somebody administers what gets input into the web application? Or are they able to take the hardware and the software and be able to use it in places like Māori trusts or marae trusts, and be able to input the information that they need, and that those different hardware and software systems can start talking to a collective of systems around the country? So that's something that we're going to move more towards, because we really want to make sure that they have their own autonomy in space. And I think that helps too with the tikanga and kawa and the guidelines around how that information is used, because if they can control that themselves, then they can share whatever they want and keep for themselves what they need to. And I think that helps us actually. So that brings us to the end of phase 1, the phase 1 part of the project, which was the pilot in Tauranga Moana. And really want a big thank you to all our Kaitiaki that helped, and so thankful again to have Regan here. And I'm really glad that you actually got to listen to one of the Kaitiaki and the people on the ground that are working with this every day. So a big thank you to those in Tauranga Moana, Caine Sustainable Seas, who funded the project, and Manaaki Te Awanui, Caine, for giving me enough rope to go out and do something very different. I don't think it would have looked like this if I was in any other organisation. I don't think I would have been given enough rein to go out and just redevelop science communication in a totally different way. And I think that, we'll start heading down that track a lot more. So we've talked along about this right throughout the speech, and so this is where we're heading into phase 2 in the next part of the project. And we need to develop that kawa and tikanga. We need to make sure that we get that right, that the data that we're collecting, that the knowledge that we're collecting is shared and looked after appropriately. The improved visual mapping, so we've got to make sure that we can start developing that better and making a place for observations to be input into the system. And this is a pretty cool one actually. This one came out of a suggestion, not so much a suggestion by Regan, but one of the interviews that I did with Regan, and he talked about an organisation in Tauranga that they were studying te reo Māori as part of their work, and should I name them? Balance in Tauranga Moana, and they had been learning te reo Māori, and it made the relationship a lot easier, because they understood where Regan was coming from, and Regan was able to understand where they were coming from, and the resource consenting process went a lot smoother. So, can we develop Māori tools and frameworks that academic scientists can use, that resource managers can use from government agencies? And that'll be something that we'll investigate in phase 2. Technology is changing so fast. At the end of this project, are we going to be up to date with the technology? So we need to make sure that we're looking at where the technology is going, and that we don't develop this and it's obsolete by the time we release it. So we need to make sure that we keep up to date with that. Anything else?
Kia ora tātou. I just want to take this opportunity just to mihi atu Regan. Regan comes from the East Coast, down Ngāti Porou, a little bit down from Tauranga Moana. So once again, it's all about connections, eh? We're all connected along the East Coast there. And so I think it's only apt that I mentioned one of the great words of the tūpuna tāpirana nata, e tipu e rea mō ngā rāotao. Let you grow for the world that you live in today. Ko tō ringa ki ngā rākau o te Pākehā, hei oranga mo tō tinana. Let us do what we need to do today to sustain us in the world that we live. So put your hands to the new tools that are available out there, so it may sustain us going in physically into the future. Ko tō nākau ki ngā taonga ao tūpuna hei tiki mo tō māhunga, but hold on to the treasures of your tūpuna of your past, and hold them with pride to lead you into the future. Ko tō wairua ki te atua, nāna nei ngā mea katoa. Keep your spirit aligned with the atua. Ko tō wairua ki te atua, hei oranga o ngā mea katoa, for he is the greatest and he is the one that has created everything. So I just wanted to maybe finish off with those beautiful words from our tūpuna tāpirana nata, and I think they're still very appropriate and apt for today, moving into the future together. Mauri ora kia tātou.
That's us. Questions, my mind?
I have a question about reporting. Is there a way to make the Māori tools and frameworks like an official report? Because when you say resource consent, I wasn't quite sure what you mean. But I work in the similar thing with planning and city planning. And I try to do this kind of reporting and make it official, because if you have photos of it working and it's doing well, is there a way to make that framework more official so that it can be used for policy?
Do you want to answer how resource consent is?
Yeah. Regan mentioned earlier the Tauranga Moana Harbour Management Plan. So when we approached it together. So they come and seen us. We built that relationship, and they involved us from the onset of the development of that document. So my key probably suggestion, recommendation would be to involve tangata whenua right from the onset. Work together. Don't go and see them when you've already started. Work on things right from the onset of any project. Build that relationship first. Maybe add to that.
Yeah, and I definitely think that that's what we want to investigate. Is it going to work? So this report is the first style of report that we've done in that fashion. It's still yet to go through, and we'll see how we get on. And then hopefully in phase 2 we'll try to make that more the style that we head down. So I'm not kind of sure how far we'll get with that, but it's definitely the pathway we're going to take.
I guess as I work with kids, it was just a way to have kids involved in the official process. So if you did it with that, it's just another way for running things on that. That's cool. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions? Yeah.
Kia ora, Brendan Marshall, Tauranga High School. I was wondering to know a bit more about the people who are the Kaitiaki. Like, are they marae, or are they families or schools, or like kind of who are the Kaitiaki people that are involved?
I can start a little bit.
That was definitely one of the dilemma going through this is exactly defining a kaitaki, and we didn't actually want to define one. We just wanted to keep it as broad as possible. So it ranges from kids that want to get out there and help, and it goes all the way through to people that are working with resource consent. So it's families that live right there on the estuaries and right on the sea. It's hapū and sub-tribal groups that are wanting to I suppose, manage their environment better, right to an iwi level, where it's much broader than that. And I think that was one of the big challenges with this project, was how do we cater for such a wide spectrum of kaitiaki? And then, who are kaitiaki? Are we all kaitiaki? Should we all be looking after environment? So those are definitely some of the big challenges.
Yeah, probably couldn't answer it much more better than Regan has there. Yeah, very much so. So we start off whānau, hapū, iwi. And so I work for my iwi organisation, Te Runanga Naitarangi. We have a resource management unit, which is dedicated to these sorts of kaupapa. We're able to connect people to our hapū, who also usually have a kaitiaki or a main person that leads kaitiaki tanga for our people, a taiao unit or a resource management unit. And then from there, they usually are the ones that will connect you to the families. And it's on the marae that we hold our wānanga. That is our main base that we have as the focal point for a lot of our projects that we roll out in Tauranga Moana.
Any more?
Thanks for talking to council. We're doing a huge amount in the harbour over the next 10 years. Really interested in how you think the development of that technological understanding of the Maori issues for incomes like myself to actually, we all have the same goal, is actually to enhance the harbour. We all see that same goal together. It's how you help us understand your side of that coin, and that is fundamental to me. I'm a chartered environmentalist. This is what drives me each and every day, but how do I get to understand what you know? And I don't know. Ideas would be good, is what I'm saying.
Kia ora. We've got a big port in Tauranga Moana, the biggest export in all of New Zealand. There was no relationship that existed just around 8 years ago or so. What we've done is we've created now a forum where we bring all the industries around that port of Tauranga. We meet regularly, and we've taken them onto our marae. We've had marae experiences, wānanga, because one of our marae actually bangs smack right in the middle of all that industry, and there was no relationship that existed with them before. So we've created a forum which enables us to sort of work with them, understand where they're going into the future, and then nowadays we engage very early, even before a resource consent is even talked about. We meet and we talk about it before they even start that process. So we do a lot of the work pre-resource consent in terms of that mahi. So yeah, that's how we sort of build the relationship together. Is we go to their meetings and listen to what they have in the plan for the future, and we bring them onto the marae and we talk about what our plans are for the future also. So it's just a mutual thing like that. So it works for us.
I'm working in a similar space but around awa and rivers, and obviously in Taumaki and OZ and iwi, so there's a lot more different iwi and hapū and whānau that we're engaging in our projects. Have you got any tips or advice around how you actually lead your wānanga and your interviews with people? Because we're finding there's a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of sensitivity around mātauranga and how you share mātauranga. So I'd be really interested if you have any advice around even who actually conducted those interviews. Was it you as an outside entity, or was it you conducting interviews with themselves, or if you can offer any advice?
Thanks, right. I'm Caine. I was meant to be talking, but I don't want to skip these guys' thunder. I think that goes back to what Regan was saying earlier about engagement. True engagement, you create a level of how you involve yourself in the project. And it's that space where you create guiding principles, as Regan demonstrated, but more importantly, understand those guiding principles. And I think, put things in context, what has been discussed is that there had been a relationship that we had built as Manaaki Te Awanui with our whānau the last probably 8 years. And it's that relationship that probably helped springboard projects like this. But 8 years sounds like a long time, but by no means. We learned how not to do things properly. So it's in that space with that engagement and the relationships where created, I guess. And it's through those engagement processes and creating those guiding principles which sort of act as a filter, keeps everyone in check. And if it wasn't for that, then we'd be probably steering on a different path. But it's just connecting each other with those different paths.
I think because I was a part of not so much organising the interviews in the wānanga, that was done through Caine and his wife Waiaria, which I was really thankful that they were able to bring people like Regan together and all the Kaitiaki into a place where we can wānanga. And I think the hardest bit for me was just letting them talk and not having any agenda, just getting them in a space where they were happy enough to share. And I think the hardest part really was then how do you take all those conversations and piece them together, and it really was a jigsaw puzzle of what was important. And I think that when we look back to those guiding principles and our core values, I remember sitting down with my wife in the corner here, Carmen, and we had mountains of paper of interview records, and I remember we were just brainstorming all the different, we were circling pieces of paper, what relates to what, we were cutting pieces of paper out, we were gluing them, we were grouping them, and that's kind of how the groupings came out, and they ended up being in those core values and those guiding principles. So that was an awesome part of the project. Actually, was very hard, but it came together in the end.
So you're saying that your guiding principles came out of some initial interviews, so that wasn't something you brought to the project rather than something you developed from listening early and then that also guided the subsequent?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because in the initial proposals, and I think that that's something that we can get ourselves into trouble with, is we have to propose these projects to get the funding, and you don't have the engagement already with the people, and so you're already developing the projects to get the funding, and you haven't even got the people on board. And I think that actually came up, and so we already had guiding values, we already had a stepwise process of how to do things, the literature reviews, the finding gaps through academic science, and we ran into a lot of trouble along the way. And so that's basically, let's go and talk to the people, and let's start redeveloping those core values.
Can I just add to that, Regan? Sorry, I'm Robin from Sustainable Seas as well. I will say that we have collectively over the challenge learned from that, and for phase 2, the second half of our programme, the next 5 years, all of the projects are being co-developed from the beginning so that we don't run into that issue. So it takes extra time, but it's so worth doing. And we're very grateful to the Māori and various stakeholders who are making the investment to be involved from those early stages, because it's a lot to ask people, but it does pay off.
Good question.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up now, but you do have time to talk to these guys for a little bit afterwards. Just going to say a big thank you to all three of you for joining us today. It's been an honour to hear about your projects. Thank you all for joining us for our Sustainable Seas Challenge. There's been a few of you guys that have repeated and been to our other ones, so it's great to see familiar faces. And thank you to the Sustainable Seas Challenge for collaborating with us to bring this to you guys today. So I want to give another big applaud to our speakers today and to Caine for coming along. And there's still some technical here, I believe, out there.
Kia ora tātou. It's been a privilege for us to be here today, just to finish off in a culturally appropriate way. E ki ana te kōrero, ma te hoi ngātahi o te waka, tēnā ka tūtuki pai te kaupapa. By way of rowing our waka together in unison, that's how we will achieve outcomes. Nō reira, kia kaha, kia kotahi te whakaaro o tātou katoa, ko te kaupapa matua, ko te taiao, ko te taiao, ko te taiao. He ha te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, huri no i te whare, tēnā tātou katoa. E hi katoa ke hi hungara, taua hei tamatu, umea ki te uru, umea ki te tonga, i Eke nuku, eke rangi, arara, arue, toia ki te hau, marana, ka whakarongoe, e taki te ara.